if you're like me when you started out with this hobby, you actually knew nothing about what a palette was and how to start creating them. Today, I'm going to show you how to do an HOO color palette using hydrogen and oxygen data, plus also integrating it with our RGB stars. Stick around. So you've likely already seen my video on the actual acquisition of WR134 or Wolf-Rayet 134. Today we're going to actually show you how I processed that data. So here we go. We're inside of PixInsight at this point, and we're going to begin looking at what we've got. So I've already opened everything up just to save a couple minutes here. We're going to rename, and then we have green. HA. O3 and red. So HOO+RGB. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to do a little bit of tone mapping, which is going to be where we pull our stars out and stretch the nebulosity a little bit more than the stars. Let me get these all together here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image Integration. You can do that by going to Processes, All Processes, and then Image Integration. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my 3 files. It's actually 2 files, and we're going to use the hydrogen a 3rd time. We're going to apply this, but then we're going to... This will then make what we're going to use as our luminance data if we feel like we need it. Now you'll see some rotation here, and that's going to be because I made some changes, and I knew I was going to be making some changes. In the middle of my imaging session, I needed to make some adjustments to my camera, and therefore you see we're off just a couple degrees here. Not to worry. Now we'll go to back here, and we're going to grab our RGB images, and then we're going to rerun this. Now what this is going to do is this is going to tell me what my framing can be under the circumstances of using our RGB stars now too. Once that's done, we'll go ahead, close it down, open up our screen transfer function, make sure you unselect the chain link, and then press our radiation button. So we're going to use this image because this is what we're going to frame with. To do so, we're going to go to Processes, All Processes, and we're going to go to Dynamic Crop. We will reset it, zoom out, and we're going to grab as much information as we can, making sure that we're not losing some overlapping data. Because right up here, if you use any of this, there's a good chance it may not actually exist on the field rotation that made this particular image that's way off. So we do want to make sure that we have 100% overlap between all the images. Now we will have a lot of overlap right here, but because we have so many photos here and then more even here, we know that we can use that because we'll have a good amount of sampling space. And I'll pull that in just a little bit more. So we're going to drag this little corner tab to make a copy of this dynamic crop. I'm going to go ahead and close it. I'm going to apply it here. And I'm going to apply it here and just make sure that we look very similar. To do so, we're going to click the radiation button, and then we'll just take a quick look and compare these two. They should be the same because we were aligned to begin with. So you can see this star down here in this corner. We've got these 2 stars right here that line up with this particular corner. We actually don't need this one anymore. I'm just going to put it over here to the side because I'm not going to use it anymore. We do want to keep our dynamic crop because now we want to open all of our images, and we'll go ahead and apply. I'm not going to worry about stretching these because I don't care how they look just yet. We'll just do one step at a time. Okay, so this one is going to be Lume 1. So let's go ahead and start processing it to begin with. So the first thing, as you guys can recall, that we're going to do next is going to be background modelization, dynamic background extraction. I'm going to go ahead and move our screen transfer function to this side. That way, for my workspace, I can see my screen better. Okay, so the first thing we're going to set here is division, normalize, discard, and replace. We're going to click the reset button. Alright, so we're going to click the reset button just so we start fresh. We're going to say division, normalize, and replace. From here, I'm going to change the tolerance to just 2. That way I get a good sample of everything. With my camera, I know 150 works well, and 7 samples per row. And then I'm going to say generate. Then, as you've seen in my other videos, we're going to come in here and delete all of the inside boxes. Now that we've done that, we're going to drag this and put it on the bottom as well. Or in the background, excuse me. Put them down here, and then we're going to go ahead and run it there. We have to close it because we cannot continue to use a dynamic session throughout this process. Next thing I'm going to do is use automatic background extractor. I'm going to turn off normalize because I don't want to re-normalize. And we will drag that on. The screen will go black. Go ahead and minimize. And we'll click our radiation button in the screen transfer function window. And then here we go. So this is the data we're working with. We can zoom in and just take a look at it. You can see some amazing nebulosity in here. And I can't wait to see what it actually yields in the form of a colored image here. So, next thing we're going to do, because we do have a monochrome image, we don't have to worry about neutralization or color calibration. We will go ahead and open and run Noise Exterminator. We'll make sure we have the most recent version. It is linear data. Now remember, linear data means we have not stretched it. The easiest way to think of it is like a heartbeat. It's just flat. There's nothing to it. We haven't pulled up our lines, right? We don't have any lines to pull up just yet. So you will select a linear when you have not stretched your image yet. And then we'll drag that on top. It's nearly done. After it is finished, we'll minimize noise extractor and let's just zoom in and see what we have. So before and after. Now you can see we actually have relatively low amounts of noise here because we do have a pretty good amount of integration for it. So Noise Exterminator does an amazing job, and in this case it didn't have a huge task ahead of it to get this image to be nice and clean. But I know I've used even just 1 hour's worth of data, and Russell Croman's Noise Exterminator has done amazing work to really cut down the amount of noise, and it almost looks like you have a 20-hour integrated image because of how well it works. So the next thing we will do is I'm going to press F12 on my keyboard to kill my stretch. Now I'm going to press F12 on my keyboard, which will turn off our preview stretch. And we're going to go to histogram stretch. I am going to make this just a little smaller. And we're going to click this little preview button down here. We're going to reset the image. And now we're going to pull in our midtones. We're going to reset the image. Then we're going to make sure we click this checkbox so we have a track view. And we're going to pull in our mids all the way until we touch that line right down here. And we're going to say, and we're going to apply. We will reset and do the same thing again. Pull it up until the line. Restretch. Now we're going to pull in the black first, and here's why. If I pull in the mid and then I pull in the black, you see how the mid moves still? So it's easiest to pull in your blacks first until it touches the bottom level. We're going to go right here. Then we're going to pull in the mids. And we're going to focus on just the stars. Obviously, this will be too much. We only want the stars to stretch in this particular case. So I think I like them about here. I don't know if I really want them to be much brighter than this. Let's take a look. Yeah, that's probably fine. Remember, the thing that you are doing here with tone mapping is we're going to stretch the nebulosity even further once we've removed the stars. So the purpose of only focusing on the stars when we do this initial stretch is to get the stars where we want them, because the nebulosity obviously is going to get a boost later. Now that we're here, we're going to close our preview. We're going to run Star Exterminator. I'm going to say select AI. I'm going to make sure we grab 10. And I want to generate a star image and drag. I'm going to minimize Star Exterminator. We have our stars out. I did create the image just in the event I do want to save it. I'm not going to. For the loom layer, we do want to keep our stars because we have to put those back into the image when we apply this. So we do want to make sure we create it here. Now with our H and O, or a hydrogen and oxygen, some people don't necessarily save those, but I do. In the rare event, you're going to use those instead of your RGB stars for any number of reasons. With that, look at this incredible thing. This seriously looks like something from that Netflix series Stranger Things. It's almost like I'm speechless as to describe what I'm looking at. It is pretty neat though, and when you zoom in, you can see where right here in the core, it's blowing these massive, strong solar winds that are pushing all of this gas backwards from the center outward. And you can see those ripples in the actual clouds here of gas and dust pushing outward. And that's what's blowing that cavity out. It's going to be right here in the center. So with the luminance, we will go ahead and say File, Save As. I like to put this in my Pix. I like to put this inside of my Pix folder. We're going to call it Loom1, TIFF, Save, and 16-bit. We can minimize our Loom1. I'm going to put it down here because I am done with it. We'll process that later. So now we'll go to our HA. We will do screen transfer function. So the next thing we're going to do is the dynamic background. And you can see there's a little gap. Let me scroll in so you see this. There's a little gap on the edge. We want these boxes to be on the edge, and is why sometimes you do have to say generate again and then go and remove the boxes from the core inside the image again. If they don't butt up to the edge, you may not get the result that you're looking for, and the result we're looking for is a consistently smooth image all the way around. And that's kind of what the division does for us. It gives us a better balance, I've found. This does not work on every single image, disclaimer. It works on most images, not all. So you do need to use it, and use it with a little bit of caution and discretion. So we've applied it. We'll go ahead and close it. And you can see the before and after. You see how it kind of gives us a little bit of a balance throughout the image now. Then we'll run automatic background extractor, and this does a really good job. It doesn't always do the best job, so you do also need to use this with discretion. I'm content with this the way it is right now. Look how massive this star is right here. It's incredible. Again, with a monochrome image, you're not going to use background neutralization or color calibration, but we will move into Noise Exterminator. So I'll run this and we'll be right back. Noise Exterminator is done, so we will minimize it. We will press F12 on our keyboard and go to histogram transformation, real-time preview, and then we have the box already set here after I press select or reset. We'll go ahead and pull this in and apply. We'll pull in the black point just to the bottom there, and then pull this in and apply. And then this is about where we're going to start doing our fine tuning. So I'm going to pull into about right here. And again, we only care about the stars. So I actually like the stars right about here. I think that's probably good. So I'll apply that. I'll reset, minimize, and I'm going to drag this down so I can close this. Next thing we're going to do, star Exterminator, generate the star mask. And we are no longer linear because we just stretched it. So we will click, hold, drag, and drop. So our Exterminator is done. We will minimize it, and we will save our HAA stars, but we are going to put it down here, just in the event we need to recall it later. And then same thing, we're going to save file, save as HA1 TIFF. 16-bit. Okay. We're now done with the HA image. I will pull it down and put it right next to HA stars. 03. Here we go. Probably have to regenerate. Yep. And we'll just press the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of those. We'll run it. Close. Automatic background extractor. Then we'll go noise exterminator and let that run. While this is finishing up, one thing that I've found when you do this process is if you run automatic background extractor on one image, you almost need to do it on every single image, because sometimes at the end you might actually have some bit of wonky results, and it might suggest that you needed to do everything the exact same. So I do like to be consistent on, if I run the process on one image, I run it on all images. It doesn't always work out that way, but a vast majority of the time it does. So now just look at this 03 data. This is incredible. It's going to be an amazing blue hue into this image. I like what I'm seeing already. So from here, we will press F12. We'll go to histogram transformation, real-time preview, reset the image, and let's start sliding. Pull black all the way to the bottom. I'm looking at the top right up here. I want to make sure that where this line is dropping down and then it hits the floor, our box here is lined up just to the side of that. Then we'll pull this. We're going to focus in on the stars. So the stars are probably good right about here. So we'll say execute. We'll minimize histogram, close the real-time preview, and now star Exterminator. We'll hit again. And then we'll be back in just a minute. Star Exterminator is finished, so we will now minimize, and we will save the stars because it can't hurt. We'll go to File, Save As. And we're going to say 031 TIFF file. And I'm just pressing the T on my keyboard after pressing Tab to immediately get to TIFF. Okay, so it's saved. We'll save the image, but we are going to pull it down here. Now, let's do our RGB stars and just have that ready to go. So we're going to say combine red, green, and blue. And those obviously correlate with RGB. We'll execute globally, minimize this, and let's stretch it. First thing I'm going to do, generate, and then remove. That way our background is consistent. It's where we're going to focus here, and make sure we don't have any crazy star colors. Oop. Delete and execute. Close dynamic background extractor, automatic background extractor. Let that run. And we'll restretch. It is truly incredible to see the difference between narrowband and broadband. when you zoom in on this image, you notice there's very little signal, and that's the difference you get between taking a 2-minute long exposure with RGB filters and a 10-minute long exposure with 3 nanometer hydrogen and oxygen filters. We'll run Noise Exterminator on this. Noise Exterminator is done, we'll minimize. We will kill our preview stretch with F12. Histogram transformation. And this stretch that we're going to do is only going to be looking at the stars. We don't care about anything else because we're going to just pull the stars out and apply it to our other image. So with that, we're only focused on our stars. Now, there's different approaches to stars. Okay, some people like soft stars, which would be probably more along the lines of this here, and some people like a little bit more vibrancy to it. So my advice with this is think about what you want people to look at in your image. Do you want them to see these trillions of stars that are potentially in your image? Trillion might not be accurate, but you get what I mean. There's a lot of stars in this particular image right here on the screen. Do you want people to look at those stars, or do you want them to look at the nebulosity? In my case, I want the nebulosity to be my focus with my stars supporting it. So there's my answer. I want a little bit softer stars, but I still want them to pop. I just don't want them to blow out my image and be the area of focus. So let's try to figure out where a good balance is. So let's reset this and let's see, right? This is going to be too soft for what I want. But I really think we're going to have really excellent star color with this. I mean, you can already see we get some great colors. Let's see if I can pull this black slider in so that background darkens up a little bit, and maybe I pull it to about here. See, I think this is too much. And in the areas I'm looking at, this star, and this cluster of stars here. Watch how quickly you can make them the area of focus. 1, 2, and 3, right? I don't know if I like it that much. So let's pull the black in and let's stamp that. That way we don't have to keep sliding that. Okay, so now, let's see. And what you can do is just watch the halo that basically is around these stars. Once that really starts to blow out is when I want to cut it off. So honestly, I think I'm content with it right about here. And I'm going to call that good. Because again, I want that star color. I just don't want the stars being the focus of my image. So we'll close our real-time preview. This looks good. We'll do Star Exterminator, drag and drop. So once this finishes up, and we're almost there, again, it'll pull out these stars for us. We don't need to keep the background image, but I always like to keep the files because once you delete them, you cannot get these back. So we will minimize Star Exterminator. We'll look at the background image, and look, you do see a little bit of that nebulosity, but it's just so much more when you go narrowband. So I'm going to minimize this image. We're going to pull it down and just leave it down here at the bottom. I'm going to rename the stars to RGB stars 1. We're going to keep it exactly like it is. I don't even know if I want to mess with the star color. We might add a little bit of saturation to it. And we can actually demonstrate what that looks like. I clicked this button right here, which creates a luminance style mask for us. And I'll minimize it. I'm going to right click inside of the image, go to mask and say show mask to turn off that view. And let's just go to curves transformation. Oh, ultra big. Let's do real-time preview, reset the image. And now look how you can modify just the stars once they're out. See, we don't want to blow them out like this, but maybe we want a little bit of color. So we just boost our saturation a little bit. And maybe the lightness just a little bit too. Call that good. That way we retain some of that color after it got pulled out from there. So I'm going to actually delete this mask. That's fine because we can always make a new one. And you can see before and after, it's probably incredibly subtle, so much so that you don't really even see much of a change, but you do get a little bit more vibrancy in those colors. So we'll minimize this. We do want to keep it, so I'm going to put it up here on the top for myself. So we have now processed all of our images that we want to actually keep. I'm going to go to Photoshop. Okay, so we have our images. The first thing I always like to do is go to Filter, Pro Digital Software, and Flat. That way it kind of pulls out the haze. It does a really good job with this. I like that. And last one. And again, I'm doing this because I do this pretty much on all of them. Okay, that looks good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my levels adjustment because we're going to do the actual tone mapping process here in Photoshop. So I'm going to go Control L. And now you can see we can pull this slider in. And see how there's no data here? We can pull our highlights in as well. And look what it did to all of that hydrogen. Now we can just look at our filter, or our midtones here, and see if there's anything we want to do. I actually really liked it with 1. I don't think I'm going to touch this. I think I'm going to call that good and say OK. Luminance, we're going to do the same thing. Control L for levels. And then we're going to pull in the black slider until we get to the base of the data. This is our data block here. Right where it touches, we want that black point. And we're going to pull in up until there's a gap right there. So I'm going to pull it just to the side of the gap. And I'm going to call that good because you do want to make sure that your luminance is very closely matched to the other ones, because when you go to apply your luminance later, if your luminance data is significantly lighter than your hydrogen and oxygen, for example, it will kill your colors later on when you go to combine them. So always double check that you're in the same ballpark with regards to how bright they are. And you can see as I click them, it's pretty much right on cue. Now this is obviously going to be a little bit darker. So this is the point where we're going to go ahead and brighten up our blues by going Control L for levels. We'll pull in our black point. And then we're going to pull in our highlights. And then let's see. I do want to keep an eye on that. I don't want to blow it out so much that it starts to make the highlights so bright that you lose some of the filamentary views of the O3. So I'm going to call that good. I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to go back here and double check and look at that. Watch right here, right where this circle is, this general vicinity as I click through. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Almost similar. So we're going to call this good, and we're going to go ahead and move this back into Pix. So I'm going to say Save As, HA2. And we may not even use the luminance. I always like to just have it in the event I do want to use it. Okay, so now we're back into PixInsight. Let's go back to that folder. Let's grab HA2, Loom2, O2, or O32. Okay, we'll minimize these and get these together. So this is the fun part. We're going to go to Channel Combination. We're going to say HA2 for red, and then we're going to say O32 for blue, and O3 for green. And we're going to apply it and see what we get color-wise. Okay, so I'm going to minimize screen transfer function because we don't need that. Double click over here and call our image HOO. Scoot it over just slightly. So this looks really good. I'm really pleased with what we've got here. But what I'm going to do is
I prefer to do this coloring once it's like this inside of Photoshop. So I'm going to say File, Save As, HOO1. And the reason why I do it in Photoshop is I do, after just some experimenting, I do think Photoshop has a little bit better coloring. You can create the masks and do it inside of PixInsight, but once it's gotten to this point, I think this looks better when we use Photoshop. Plus, we also need to do some corrections here because you can see there's some remnants of stars that are left over, like inside of the circle here. So I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool, and I'm going to press Alt to take a sample of some data right next to it, and I'm going to clone stamp that star out. Otherwise, it can really start to blow out and look really bad as you do your image. So we just want those areas where the stars didn't fully pull all the way out and clone stamp those. Just so we don't get any, like one area that's like bright blue that just sticks out among all else. Let's do there. There's another area. And now the important thing is, if we do decide to use the Luminance Mask over this particular image is only going to be for color anyways. So you're not adding data at this point because our luminance is going to be where our data is, whereas this will be where our color is. So we just don't want the color to stick out really horribly, is the key thing we're going for. I'm not going to worry about inside of there. I think the rest is fine. Let me zoom back out. There we go. So there's no like little dots that, there's no dots around here that really draw out from the rest. So with this, I'm going to go Control J to create a new layer, and I'm going to go to Selective Coloring. We've got a lot of red in this image, so let's start playing with our reds. I'm going to pull all of my cyan out. I do not want that. And I'm going to boost my magenta just a little bit. And we're going to see what the yellow does. I don't want to add too much yellow. Let's see. And a lot of this is just getting a feel for what you want out of it. Let's see. I want to go to Hue and Saturation. I'm going to look at just our reds here, and I want to mess with the hue. Because I only want this image to be red. I don't want it to be any other color. It's got to be red. I don't want it to be overblown, so let's just maybe do 6. Okay, so let's say merge down and merge down. And then let's go to Selective Color again. And now let's see if we can play with our red to... I don't know if I want to pull all the cyan out. We'll pull 30% out. We don't want to put all the magenta in. It starts to look purpley. So I'm going to do maybe right here and then see what our yellows can do for us. That would be kind of crazy to see, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to pull a good portion of that yellow out there and see what happens with our black point, if that's going to help us out at all. You could kind of go with more of an eerie look. That would probably be it. I do want some of this color though, so I'm going to boost the blacks up to maybe about here. And again, this is 100% feel. This is whatever you want it to do. And I think I like this. So now let's go to our our cyans, and let's boost our cyan, and we're going to be watching right here now. I'm going to push cyan all the way up and pull out magenta. I do want this to be blue. I'm actually going to boost our magenta. Let's see what happens with our yellow. Pull our yellow all the way out so we get a nice blue tone to it. And we'll lighten it up just a little bit. Let's just go 30 here. And then let's check our hue and saturation. Probably fine there. You can see how moving the saturation slider can change your whole image in a matter of seconds. So you do want to be very careful, and if you need to reset, go ahead and do so. So saturation is going to be a really small change, if anything. I'm going to just stick to 7. And I'm not going to change the lightness at all. I'm going to actually bump this down to 5. I don't think I'm going to change that. Okay, so we're going to say merge down and merge down, and let's go back to color and let's see about our neutrals. Let's see if we pull some out there. Well, just a smidge of magenta out, maybe. Definitely don't want purple. Maybe pull out 3 here. Yellow. I'm gonna leave yellow as is. I don't really want to change that. And then I'm gonna leave black right where it is too. So let's go check our reds again. And you know what? I don't think I'm gonna make... Did I make any changes? Yeah, so let's say merge down. And let's go back to, let's go to vibrance and see if I want to pull some of the vibrancy out of this. You can see how it affects our histogram as we make these changes. Now I do like the idea of a lot of red, but I don't want to be at too much. That might be good right there. Let's do another hue and saturation, and let's check our reds. See if that's the hue that we for sure want. I think it's gonna be, and I don't think we need to saturate it anymore. Maybe we'll bump it up about 4. And we're not going to touch our lightness. Let's go back to our blues and let's check our blues. Stretch this a lot to see what areas we're impacting. We'll move it just 3 over. Boost that little bit of saturation with the blue. And then we'll go back to our cyan, which will be this bulk area here. I'm going to pull 1 out. Saturated there. Okay. So I'm going to say that's good for coloring. So let's go back, say save as HOO+, and let's bring it back here. And you can see the difference, watch this, between the images. Yeah, significantly different. We haven't added any data though, we just simply colored it a way that we wanted it colored. The data is available. So we'll put our HOO down here. So at this point, I'm happy with the coloring. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the stars in. So we have our RGB stars. So we're going to go to Pixel Math. We're going to then go to Expression Editor. The image we want to apply it to is HOO+, so HOO+ plus, and then RGB stars 1, so we'll find that in our list. RGB stars 1, and say, okay. Drag it and drop it. So now you have an HOO image with RGB stars. But look how many stars there are. There are so many stars. So you can see why I said you don't want to blow out your stars because they'll quickly swamp your image.
Now we still have some cleaning up to do with the stars. There's just simply too many in here. So what we'll do is go ahead and say convolution, and I'm going to blur my image. Now you can see it's blurry. We no longer have details because we don't want the details, we want the color. That's maybe too much convolution. Let's do, how about 4? Maybe a little less. And the reason why you do this is because, again, this is a color image. We only care about the color. We want nice, smooth transitions of color, and that's why we blur it, because it also helps remove some leftover noise, right? You can see it just, the whole thing's blurry, so the colors transition a little bit cleaner. Okay, so our HOO image is done. Let's go back to our luminance, so Lume 2. Let's go to Pixel Math. Let's remove these. We'll go to Expression Editor. We're going to find our Luminance Mask. So Luminance 2, space, plus, and we have Lume 1 stars. That's what we want to put our stars back in. Say OK, and drag and drop. And now we've got our stars back in. So this is our luminance layer. We'll go ahead and minimize it and reopen our colored image. Is blurred. We're going to go to LRGB combination. We're going to grab our luminance 2 and put it right on top. I'm going to turn off the noise reduction because it takes a little while to run. And I'm going to drag. Yeah, you know what? Just from experience, I usually pull these down to a little bit. And we'll drag and drop. So you can see we increased our lightness by decreasing it here. I don't like that. So let's put the lightness back up, and we'll drag and drop and try it again. So let's see what our image was before. Before and after. I think those spots are too bright maybe, so let's go back. Let's look at our luminance, and let's go curves. Let's see if we can preview, reset. I'm gonna pull down RGB to make it just a little less bright, but I want to do it up here. Let's just try that. Like it. Close our preview, push it back, we'll go to LRGB combination. We already have Lume 2. Drag and drop. I don't like that. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go back. And we're going to go unblur our image, and we're going to keep this. So again, this is an example where I'm not happy with what my luminance mask is doing to my data. So therefore, because most of this is just colored data, I'm not going to worry about using my luminance mask. But it's always good to go ahead and run all of your programs to do it, and then you can decide at this point if you want to keep it. I see no reason why I want to keep it at this point, because it does alter our colors just enough that I'm not happy with that. So what we want to do at this point is we're going to create a luminance mask. I'm going to drag and drop it here. Minimize that. Go to mask. Show mask. And I'm going to do something a little... We're going to try one of two settings. I'm going to go to 50, and I'm going to drag and drop this and see what it does. I am going to bump down to 40%. Yeah, if we zoom in here, we'll be able to see where we pull out some of that brightness overall, but we highlight it in other areas. So I do like that. We'll actually just keep that. So I'm going to say remove. Actually, you know what? Let's do this now. Let's try 300. Let's bump down the amount to 35, and now let's run it again and see what this does for us. I'm hoping that it gives some contrast within these red areas up here for me. Now, once local histogram equalization is finished here, we will minimize it. Let's close our mask, or delete it. That way I can zoom in and just see, did it touch anything? It definitely gave a little bit of highlights in areas. Let's see what it did to the aqua here. Gives a little more definition. I do like that. So now we have way too many stars, so I'm going to go to Script. I'm going to go to Easy Processing Suite and Star Reduction. I'm going to create a mask, and this will take a little bit of time, so I will fast forward through this. And then we will run it once the mask is done. After running this, I'm going to delete this mask. I know it's a pain to recreate it, but otherwise it will show the mask every time you just click back. And I just want to click before and after. Look at the difference. It's so significant on level of brightness. Before and after. Let's zoom in just to the shell here, if you will. So before, just watch this star right here and this star right here. These are our big stars. See how we kill down, we bring down the level of brightness just enough that we can still see the stars, but it's not going to overbear our image, and it does reduce the radius of the stars. We can actually just zoom in and watch the radius of this star here. See how it brings that radius down just a bit? And that's what it's going to do. It's going to do a morphological transformation and bring them down to be a little bit smaller and really make our image pop way more. So from here, I'm going to say Save As. I'm going to call this HOO3 because that's next in order. Say OK. Go back to Photoshop. Put it in. And now I'm going to say Control J. And I'm going to say Other. High Pass. And I'm going to say OK to this. I'm going to change it to be Soft Light. And then I'm going to click on... Actually, let's zoom in and see here. So I like this for only the blue areas. If we zoom out, you can see it actually makes our stars big again. So the blue area is where we have a lot of detail. So I'm going to decide to mask this and then do Control I to invert it. I'm going to come over here and make sure I'm set to white. And I'm going to grab my brush. We're at 60 and a flow of 50. That's fine. I'm going to use the brackets here to start clicking in some of that detail. It helps make the blue pop, it looks like. I don't really care so much about the red. The blue is what makes this image pop, so let's make the blue pop just a little bit. And we're not adding data, we're not doing anything other than just using a process that kind of outlines a little bit better, and it removes some of the haze of the image. So now what we can do is before, after, before, after, before, and after. You see how it just kind of makes some of those ridges pop a little bit more, it darkens up some of the dark areas, and it just removes a little bit of the haze in that general vicinity. So I'm going to say that's good for me. And I do want to mess with these reds once more, right? Getting the red where you want it is always going to be difficult. So I'm going to go Control J. I'm going to go to, let's go to Hue and Saturation to start with, and let's go to just our reds. And let's see, do we want to change? I might give it just a little bit of a boost. Let's just see what it does when we... Let's see with our saturation. That's obviously going to be way too much. I might boost our saturation by 3. That might help it smooth out a little bit here in our lightness. See, I don't like that for sure. So let's go back to 0. Let's go back to 0 and let's boost 3 and let's actually bring our lightness down by 5. You can see what we're doing here, right? And just dimming it a little bit so it's not so vibrant. I like that. Now let's go to selective color and let's go to reds and see if we can make the color. Let's see, let's pull a little bit of cyan out. I don't think I even want to touch that. I want to. And we'll pull a little bit of that cyan out there. Now let's go to our cyan color and we're going to focus back on the blue section here. Let's see if we want to adjust any more coloration. I think I'm going to boost it a little bit. And let's pull out some of the magenta. I want it to be kind of a teal or a turquoise color here. So we can see what we're doing is incredibly subtle. But I think it does make a difference. Alright, so let's just go here and say flatten image because I'm happy with that. So at this point, I think I'm going to call this good. I like where it's at. I like the vibrancy, the colors. They're not overbearing, but we also still have our stars. Our stars are not swamping our image at this point. There's a chance I might go back and redo this just to see if I get a different result, because you can process your same image multiple times and you can get different variations of color and contrast. So I usually will process images up to 2 or 3 times just to figure out which one I like best. You can do the same technique and you can get different results based off of where you put dynamic background extraction points or the automatic background extraction. Maybe you don't run it next time, and you can get different results because it does shift your data a little bit. It doesn't alter it, but it does shift some things. So if you're happy with your image, great. You can watch this video again, follow along, edit your image all over again, and I promise you can get a completely different result. Now, when I say completely, you're still going to have red and blue, but you may have different variations of it, and it may just feel differently. It may be more warm and vibrant, or it may be more cool and dim. So it really, the coloring, it comes down to what do you want. Don't mind what anybody else says or does. It's whatever you want. You're the photographer. This is your data. Modify it the way you want it. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Thank you so much for joining. If you liked this video, help this channel grow by subscribing and making sure you press the thumbs up. Also, be sure to let me know if you enjoyed this content and let me know if you learned something new in the comments below. Again, thank you so much for joining. Clear skies, everyone.